World's Worst Pickup Lines That Actually Worked by Tim Beecham. Pickup line number 1, the scenario. Eric and Jason were out at a bar on a Friday night. After a few drinks, the gauntlet was dropped and a challenge was issued. Eric bet Jason that he could not use this pickup line. Jason was way past the legal drinking limit. The rules of engagement were clear. The loser, it says looser. Wait, I want that noted. It says looser. I can read.
The law of the land was, if you read, you die. If you read, you fucking die. Okay? So you know what that means? The first black drug dealers didn't even sell drugs. They sold books. Yo, man, I got 2 pages, man. Check it out, man. I got 2 pages, man. Yo, man, I got a word. Check it out, man. I got a new word, man. It's new, man.
Hey, I'm Dave.
I'm Virginia.
This is Books in Common.
Yeah, we're 2 strangers, and we found out that we have at least one book in common.
I think there's like a mathematical thing, though, right? If you go into a restaurant or some place, like a subway station, where there's at least like 30 people, you'll find at least one person that has a book in common with you.
That's true. And if you walk into a restaurant and there's like 100 monkeys on 100 typewriters,
yep.
You have to go because that is against all codes.
This is 1,000 monkeys working at 1,000 typewriters. Soon, they'll have written the greatest novel known to man. Let's see. It was the best of times. It was the blurst of times. You stupid monkey. You shut up.
I don't care if they're making Shakespeare or not. Like, that's dirty. It's not correct.
If they wrote Shakespeare, though, you'd have a book in common with the monkeys.
Yeah, you would. You were like, you wrote Hamlet? I read Hamlet.
Yeah, it was like...
And then one monkey's like, well, I wrote all of Hamlet, but then the last letter was wrong.
Yeah.
So then it wasn't Hamlet.
Yeah. And then one monkey's like, I wrote it, but I cut out Act 3 because, it's Act 3.
And exactly. And one of the monkeys is like, well, in my version of Hamlet, Ophelia lives.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah. And then she has her own play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's called Adventures of Ophelia. So the book we're going to talk about, or we're going to start off with,
is not Hamlet.
We're going to talk about Good Omens by the Neil Gaiman and the Terry Pratchett.
That's the one. It's a wonderful book. I think that book, it's a comedic novel, but I think for me it also says a lot about how we get locked into our own sort of beliefs about things just because it's written down somewhere. But things may have happened in a completely different way.
And that idea of re-examining gods and legends has been Neil's whole career.
Yeah.
And then Terry Pratchett had to step off and invent steampunk and annoy everyone with that. Isn't this just a fantasy version of a mid-period Douglas Adams novel?
Well, I think it's definitely a fantasy, and maybe I could see Douglas Adams. I think the one it reminded me more of was, there was the Incarnations of Immortality series.
Yeah, the Piers Anthony.
The Piers Anthony.
Sure.
Who I think Gaiman
going back to Xanth.
Yeah,
Xanth,
and I think Gaiman and et al. Are better writers than Piers Anthony for sure. But that's what it reminded me more of, was that Piers Anthony series.
And then Neil Gaiman later, he revisited the same thing for American Gods, which is going to be a television show.
Yeah.
And I probably need to reread it before then.
Are you going to be on it?
No, but I have friends who are working on it, so I kind of know what's happening. No, this is as a consumer only, although it's not important. I did introduce Neil Gaiman on a DVD. It's fine.
No, you got to tell that story.
He did a reading to raise money for the Comic Books Defense Fund, and I introduced him on the DVD, just because I was the loudest person waiting in line before.
Sometimes you just got to be loud.
Sometimes that's it.
I would say my favorite book of all time would definitely be Crime and Punishment.
And why?
I read Crime and Punishment first of all, I read it in the 6th grade. Should not read that book. Would not recommend that your kid read Crime and Punishment in elementary school, first of all. But I like the book. I also love Edgar Allan Poe. So it was like the thrill of knowing this guy had murdered someone, and the psychological, I like anything that's psychological, but how he could just, you could just get off and just be quiet and live your life. But no, the psychological toll that it took on someone who knows that's fascinating, that you can do something and you can't even take responsibility for it. Like, you can't sleep, you can't handle what you did. And I think that is the most exciting thing about that book. Is like when you learn about like consequences, and you learn that if you do something that you can't sleep at night, don't do it. I mean, that's what think of. I remember I was 12 years old reading this book, and just like seeing, like, when you're reading, you're just like, man, just get over it. And why you're rooting for a murderer, I don't know. I have no idea. But you can't help it. You're like, just get over this. But you see that when you have a conscience, like, you can't just let things go. And that was like the most telling thing for me for Crime and Punishment. And even anything that Edgar Allan Poe does, like Telltale Heart, and like all these things that psychologically you're just like, wait, how is this happening? It just messes with your mind. And I don't like that. And the thing is, I don't even like that kind of stuff. It gives me nightmares. But I can't help. It's like the Mistress Man. You can't help it. You just keep going to him. I don't know that Crime and Punishment itself has I don't know that it's shaped my comedy, but in a way it has, actually, when I think about it, because especially the music portion, I would say, of my act, because the cello is so dark and deep, and it's that wood, just that creepy sound. People love it, and they're drawn to it. But if you really listen to classical music, especially cello solos, they don't sound creepy to you. Like, think of movies. Somebody's normally going to kill somebody, or it's like something sad and depressing happen. It's really some depressing things that we play when we're playing classical. And I would say, if Crime and Punishment has influenced my comedy, I would say it would be my musical comedy. And I would say it's just because, one, I play the cello, and the cello definitely, I could totally see scoring that whole book with the cello easily. All just the anticipation, the psychological ups and downs, up people, like, of course, it makes a lot of sense. But I think if Crime and Punishment were to, if it influenced my comedy, it'd definitely be the musical comedy portion of what I do. Let me introduce you to my cello. My cello's name is Jerry. Say hi, Jerry.
Hi, Jerry.
Jerry says, "What up?" And people, it's weird, and that's not Jerry with the J, it's Jerry with the G. For like, G-string unit. I know. So, people are always like, is Jerry a male or a female? And I gotta be honest with you guys. When I started dating, I realized that Jerry is exactly like a man, and I'm gonna show you why. When I want to play with him, I gotta unzip him and pull him out the bag, and then I spread my legs, and he just plops down in between, and then he gets on top of me, and he just moans and groans and moans and groans and moans and groans until he crescendos. And then when it's all said and done, we have to wipe off all the residual, and then he just sits in the corner, doesn't say a goddamn thing to me for the rest of the night. I don't care what you say. That's a man. And I'll do the other bit. So, I got kicked out of the orchestra when I was 8 over creative differences over this one song. And if you know it, please feel free to sing along. I can't hear you! Louder! all for participating. I appreciate it for voluntarily participating. I got kicked out of this New York show over that song because that song is boring as hell. And anybody who's ever played an instrument, how many times have you had to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, Mary Had a Little Lamb, blah, 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 blah. So I got bored, so I brought in my version of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And then I hit Mr. Sullivan in the face with my bow. So I don't think it was over this song because I gave her a black eye. Over.
Good.